Protect our queens.
This is what makes women's basketball so fire.
Okay, they say nobody watching. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people in there, Martin.
To see how far the game has grown has been amazing.
When recess came, like, I had my sneakers on.
I mean, I just love playing the game. It's fun.
I'm reacting on what the defender does.
I hit them with a hezzy. After that, they quit.
Yo, what is up?
All right.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Protect Our Queens podcast. New home. I guess it's not even a new home. It's back home on Basketball Society. For those of you guys who are watching, will be watching, and continue to watch, we appreciate the support. With me, as always, on my left this time instead of my right, my guy, Martin Soares. How we feeling, man? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been the first show of 2025. Good to be back home. Good to be back on here to talk some women's basketball. There's a lot going on, a lot I want to talk about. So I've been itching, but yeah, good to be back here on Basketball Society. I mean, for people who've been paying attention, who really tuned in, the episodes for the last, month or two or so have been streamed on Basketball Society. But we were hosted and presented by the Give Us a Shot Network before. Now we're on Basketball Society only and exclusively, and excited for people to see what that actually means here going forward this year. So good to be back, man. Good to be home.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, man. There's a lot that's happened in the world of women's basketball. As you've mentioned, we have a packed show. Before we get into that, though, as always, we want to start the show with just a little bit of what's new, just what's happening around the world of women's basketball, aside from all the big stuff. First and foremost, Michaela Blakes set a new single game scoring record with 53 points the other day. She broke Juju Watkins' record from last season. I don't really know what else there is to say about Michaela that like you and I haven't already said. It's been great to watch her play basketball so far this freshman year at Vanderbilt. It's been a sight to behold. And I shout out Michaela, man. That's all I can say, really. That's all I can say is shout out Michaela Blakes, bro. That's impressive. That's great. Love that for her. Love it for her, man.
I feel like you're underselling what we're talking about here. The girl dropped a 50 ball. Like you're acting like she's just the great player out here, dog. She dropped 50
on 66% shooting from the field. She did do
My
that.
God. Yeah. What was the, I think, what was he? She like 15 for 23 from the field. Yeah. I'm guessing. I don't know. Was that it? Was that right?
15 from 23. Yeah. She was.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
She was knocking them down, bud.
Man, dude. And I think the coolest thing about what Michaela is doing is like having watched her and covered her in high school. Jersey girl. Our Jersey girls are out here getting it done all over the country. She just gets right to it. You don't see a lot of dribbles. You don't see a lot of fooling around. When she's open, she shoots it. Sometimes if she's not open, she shoots it. She can hit contested shots too. But quick decisions. That's what I told you when we had her on the show. I told you she had that lightning quickness. You remember that?
I remember.
She just moves. She's got
quick.
Like
she's quick.
Rare, I'm telling you, the way she moves, it's a rare type of quickness. And her trainer Carrie at Grit Basketball, he's done a really great job. And watching her continue to develop has been really dope. But for her to get a 50 ball, man, like she's been killing this season, and we've talked about her. But dude, when I saw 50, I'm like, wait, hold on. She understands it now. she put some stuff together real quick. But it's bro, what the most impressive thing is that and this is how she is. This is how her game is. Very, very simple. I mean, making great plays on both ends. It could be a steal and a layup. It could be a catch and shoot three. It could be a blow by off the dribble, finish at the basket. Like she can really fill it up, and her conditioning is so good because she's just naturally hard worker. Like, man, yeah, there's a lot of great things to say about her that we'll continue to say. Michaela Blakes is making history, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of players who we've had the opportunity to have on the show, she's in the intro. Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles graced the latest cover of the Slam. the other day, and they've been great. You obviously have been saying well before the season started that's the best backcourt in the country. They've certainly backed it up every chance they've gotten on the floor this season, and they've been great. Shout out Hannah, shout out Liv. That was a fire cover too. I don't. There's not many covers I've seen of the slam that I thought were better than that one. It's nice. It was simple. Just
Very
another
dope.
another dope thing.
First Notre Dame players to be featured on the slam cover in history.
Yeah. And speaking of first, it's not a first, but I believe Hannah the other day became like the only player other than, was it Jewell Loyd, in like the last 15 years have back-to-back 30-point, 10 assist games or something like that. She's killing. Olivia Miles is killing. A lot of greatness all around. Then we have Unrivaled. We've had a couple weeks of Unrivaled basketball. I've been enjoying it. My team hasn't been doing that good. I did adopt the Rose to be my team. They haven't been that great. I think they have 2 wins on the season so far, but it's been great basketball all the way around. Just to watch Unrivaled. That one-on-one tournament is coming up. I know that you were especially excited for the one-on-one tournament that's coming up in, I think, a week or two. Super excited. Who do you think is going to win the one-on-one tournament? Who you think is going to win?
I have no idea. There's too many buckets, too many things to consider. It'll be fun. My biggest takeaway from Unrivaled so far is that Nafisa Collier, as the owner, not only did she put together one of the best teams for herself, but she seems to be taking this time to let out her frustration from the finals on anyone who's in front of her who wants to play basketball with her. She's to be the owner, co-owner of the league, and the way she's playing out there and dominating is just again, I feel like she's letting out frustrations from the finals. And dude, she looks like amazing. She's ready to go. She wants the real season to start next week. I feel like she low key is using this league to get her get back, because she looks crazy good out there.
Yeah,
crazy good.
She's going to be the MVP this year. I think if this is the Nafisa Collier we're getting in the year of our Lord 2025, she's going to win the MVP this year. There's no way. She's looked incredible since the beginning of the season for Unrivaled to now. And then, of course, probably the best news that we saw, not related to free agency, is Candace Parker, amongst a bunch of others, are teaming up to put in a bid for that last, or at least the last team in this newest batch of WNBA expansion teams, called the Tennessee Summit. And I know that you and I, one of the last times we had a show, you went on a rant about how Philadelphia deserves a team over the likes of St. Louis and Kansas City and Pittsburgh and some of these other places that were. Would you if and you're very passionate about Philly getting a team, and Philly does deserve a team. Would you be okay if the Tennessee Summit were added to the WNBA before Philadelphia, or do you still think it should be Philly before anyone else?
No, I just think people in Philly need to be more adamant. It's not my fight to fight. I'm trying to stick up for them so they don't get at people like us. Like, I'm just looking for, where are the people ready to get moves shaken in Philly? I had nothing against those other cities. I'm all good with Nashville. I love the meaning and the energy behind it. The Pat Summitt tribute, I think that's a brilliant idea and a brilliant move. I love Nashville. I have godparents who live in Nashville, the Winans family. Shout out Uncle BB and Aunt Cece. Nashville is, that's another fun fact. Sorry. I think I just dropped that. I think I just dropped that on you for the first time. Yeah, good old Nashville, man. Yeah, I really have too many godparents, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole. It's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down.
BB and Aunt Cece.
Yeah,
this guy here, man. What's he got going on, man?
It's a whole different rabbit hole, man. Whole different rabbit hole.
I thought my cousin was special. You're talking about Uncle BB and Aunt Cece. I mean, good God, man. All right. Well, no, I agree. I think it's great. I think they should definitely. I don't have. My city has a team, and they're not going to be good this year, but that's whatever. I think Tennessee should certainly be. The Tennessee Summit should certainly be the next team added to the WNBA. There's a lot to talk about, Martin. Stories these past couple weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks of WNBA news as far as free agency has been nuts. We're going to start off with a clip of you from a couple months ago, or a couple weeks ago, actually, from one of our, last shows we did before our hiatus, before we jump into our first topic of the night.
Vegas, I think if they're moving off of Kelsey Plum, if they wanted to make an adjustment and maybe rewire the roster a bit, essentially replacing like Kelsey Plum with Jewell Loyd, however that might work. I think that could be interesting. I think people would eat that up, especially with the all-star video meme that we got from Jewell Loyd and Asia Wilson. I think people would be really pleased to see Jewell Loyd and Asia Wilson as teammates, so they could double back on that hilarious video.
So the first domino to fall in this year's free agency cycle was a monster 3-team trade that sent Jewell Loyd to Vegas, sends Kelsey Plum to the LA Sparks. I'm sure we're going to unpack the Kelsey Plum part of this just a little bit for LA, but I want to start with the question you see on the screen, Martin. Will Vegas be better or worse this season now that they have Jewell Loyd on the roster?
I mean, I can't address this without combining my thoughts about Kelsey Plum, because they go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like the Aces can be just as good with Jewell Loyd, because on paper, you're replacing scorers. That's why I said that on the show before. And I saw that as a possibility, because there were rumblings about Kelsey Plum maybe wanting to move on. And with Jewell Loyd available, like, they're two of the top shooting guards in the league. So, I mean, in that sense, it might feel like you haven't lost anything. Like, Jewell is really, I mean, there's a strong case that you got an upgrade, that's an upgrade over Kelsey Plum. So they could be fine just based on that. Like, they're swapping out one scorer for another really good scorer. One might even be better than the other. So I could see the argument for, like, they should be fine, just as good, maybe better. I am personally struggling to buy the notion that, okay, so I don't know if it's, I'm a fan of Jewell Loyd, and I'm also a fan of Kelsey Plum. And this isn't just like I don't have like Kelsey Plum bias, but that I've been very just outspoken about how much I think Kelsey Plum mattered to the championship Aces teams. I'm not just talking about chemistry. I'm talking about style of play, her style of scoring. Jewell Loyd, again, she's a great player. She's a veteran. She's a champion. She's going to know how to play with Asia. She's played with Asia, Jackie Chelsea on Team USA. Cool, fine. She's a great player. She knows how to play with. I'm not worried about like chemistry. This is how I'd put it to you. This is the analogy I have, because I've been doing the parallel with the Aces and the Spurs. This is like, as I've been able to think about this for so long, because we haven't had a show. This is our first show of this year. And if you're watching, make sure you leave any comments, leave any thoughts that you have, and tap in with us as we go along. But this is where my mind is with it. Think about if the Spurs, the 2014 Spurs that we remember, were to swap out Manu Ginobili, who I've said Kelsey Plum has been the Manu of the Aces. Imagine if the Spurs, how would it feel? How would Spurs fans and the Spurs feel and look if they swapped out Manu for Dwayne Wade? Functionally, you're getting Dwayne Wade. I mean, what's not to be excited about?
Sure.
But the way that Spurs system operated at their best when it was humming, it's not to say that Dwayne Wade's going to make them worse. It's just that Manu was exactly the right. As much as Manu gave Pop fits and made him pull his hair out and did risky things and questionable things. As much as Kelsey Plum, people want to talk about her over dribbling or her shot selection or whatever. When you watch the Aces at their best, winning back-to-back titles 2 years ago, Kelsey Plum was one of the main catalysts when they got going and they were looking unstoppable and unguardable offensively. It wasn't just Asia Wilson. It wasn't just Chelsea Gray. When they needed buckets and they needed runs, a lot of it was Kelsey Plum doing it the way that she does it. And it worked for what they needed. Again, at a distance, can Jewell Loyd just fit in and score when they need score? Yeah, she's a great scorer. Yeah. But the way I saw Kelsey, when they talk about that ball popping system that Becky liked for them, which I don't know if they're still doing that or not, or if they're going to change things up a little bit. But when I think about the formula that they had that worked, yeah, they should still be good. They should be just as good, fine, maybe better. But I struggle, until I see it for myself, I'm struggling to think that the Aces can be that much better just because it's Jewell Loyd and not Kelsey Plum. That's nothing against Jewell Loyd, because I think she's great. I think Kelsey Plum is great. I'm low key almost liking what LA has now more than Vegas. LA's looking at maybe having a big 4. We talked about that. They gave up the number 2 pick, bro. They don't need Olivia Miles anymore. They have Kelsey Plum.
Yeah.
They have a legitimate lead scoring guard, and they have other guards too. They have other good guards. It's not just Kelsey Plum and then just your wings and your forwards with Rakia and Cam and De'Erica. Like, they have they have like a playoff roster now.
Yeah.
And the Sparks, I'm going to bring them up again a little bit later, but I think the Sparks got a little spicier. Vegas, yeah, you're still good. You got Jewell Loyd, but I that's how I think of it. Like, you're basically swapping Manu for Dwayne Wade. You're getting another great shooting guard. I don't think it's always just that simple.
It's hard to argue that, right? Especially coming from you, right? It's hard to argue that when it's coming from you. No, I'm inclined to agree. I am inclined to agree that they're not. I don't think they're going to be a whole lot better comparatively. I do think that there are things that Kelsey Plum does better than Jewell Loyd in certain situations. I do think the one thing that we know about Kelsey Plum is no matter the situation and no matter what her shot chart looks like, it's not going to keep her from shooting the ball. And no matter the circumstance or the situation, we have seen times in Jewell Loyd's career, as I was reminded on Sunday when talking about this with a mentor, that there are times when Jewell Loyd kind of disappears if she's in a funk, or she kind of becomes super passive. And maybe on a Vegas team where you have, a player like Asia Wilson, that might not be as magnified as much as it was over the past couple of years in Seattle, because you still have the best player in basketball, who we know she's going to get hers no matter who the other, no matter who else is on the floor. I think the thing for me that's most interesting is, and it's been a steady talking point on the show, especially after that first championship, but even so much more after the second one, was the Aces' big advantage on a lot of teams in the league was the 3-headed monster at guard of Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and Jackie Young. Mm-hmm. And specifically on a defensive level, how difficult it was for certain teams to be able to handle that. Mm-hmm. That would be the one area of this trade where I look at and I say, maybe another move needs to be made in supplement to this to ensure that scrappiness and that toughness and that defensive prowess remains upheld at the guard position. Now, I don't know what that move is. In a fantasy land, we go get Kennedy Carter. Kennedy Carter comes off the bench. Do I think that's feasible money-wise? Do I think that's a good fit? Do I think Kennedy Carter deserves to come off the bench? No. I think Kennedy Carter is a starting caliber guard in this league. She certainly showed that last season in Chicago. But if there is one area of this where I look at it and I say maybe Vegas is going to have some concerns, it is that component of it. Is Kelsey Plum, no matter the circumstance, no matter what her individual shooting night looks like, she's not afraid to put a shot up if the team needs it. And we've seen Jewell Loyd over the past couple of years in Seattle become super duper passive in moments where she had no business being passive. And again, maybe you excuse that now because she's in Vegas and who she has around her. Maybe it's okay to be passive if you're yielding to an A'ja Wilson or a Chelsea Gray down the stretch, and maybe it's okay. So that's why. So I agree with you. Like I think it's better because I'm a fan. Like I have the bias there, but I am also inclined to think that if the passiveness is a bigger concern, maybe it won't be so much of a concern because this team is so much more talented, right? Your best player being passive on a team bereft of talent for the most part in Seattle, not a good look. Being passive and you're yielding to a Chelsea Gray or A'ja Wilson, not that bad of a look, especially if it ends up ending in what you want it to end in, which is a trip to the finals and or another championship. So like that's why I'm on the fence. I'm inclined to say that it's better, but I'm certainly on the fence. I don't want to make it seem like it's just we're going to be light years better than what we were last time we saw this team play basketball.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up like the temperament that's a big part of what I'm talking about, the difference between KP and Jewell Loyd. And even when you think about the Olympic team, bro,
sure,
Jewell Loyd became the odd woman out. And sometimes when you look at a great player or a great scorer, how they play alongside other great players might be different. Jewell Loyd, had an historic all-time season scoring wise a couple years ago, but her team was terrible.
Sure.
She was out there going crazy scoring wise, scored over 900 points in the season, which set a record at the time, but her team wasn't winning. And again, I think that I think enough of Jewell Loyd she's a great player. Great players know how to play with other great players, but we saw what happened with the Olympic team. And when you're a great scorer and that's your primary attribute, like, again, you made a great point. That's exactly where my head goes when I think about KP's style of scoring and Jewell's style of scoring. Vegas doesn't need Jewell to be a primary scorer. They need her to go on runs when they need her. Like this is a team that isn't about ISO ball and not to say Jewell can only thrive in that kind of setting, but
right.
Having to, where, and this is my other point on this. I've got 2 points based on what you said. My belief still is that Jackie Young is the most important player on that team. We know A'ja Wilson, but outside of A'ja Wilson, it's Jackie Young. Like we both agreed she didn't look the same, last year, and it made them not look the same. When they dominated 2023, when they went back to back, Jackie Young was looking better and better on her Kawhi Leonard, going back to the Spurs analogy, right? Like Jackie Young seemed to have taken a step back. We mentioned like she seemed to be a little banged up. I think she was dealing with an injury during the playoffs last year. But with Jewell Loyd, I'm looking at it now as, okay, Jackie Young, you still need to ascend because, I mean, she's younger. Jewell Loyd's been there, done that. She's a veteran scorer. She can go off for 30 still. Like she can be explosive, but that's not always what they're really going to need from her. So it's time for her to pick her spots more and adapt to that kind of setting where you're playing with other great players. They still need her to score, but it's just a different kind of setting that we haven't seen her in yet. So it's going to be an adjustment period. And that's why I'm like, man, I'm just not totally sold yet and so the other quick point I had was the main thing they need to still address when you talk about roster issues. We all know they need another big. They don't have enough support on the front line for A'ja Wilson at all. When you talk about the Liberty, I mean, they're not equipped yet. So we all know that's where their big hole is right now.
I do to that point. I do have a little bit of hope and I was very excited when we drafted her last year. We officially signed Liz Kitley now, so she's active coming. I do have hope maybe there. Nick Andre, who we had on the show a couple months ago, he tweeted the other day that he tweeted like what the starting lineup would be, and he, in parentheses, when he put Kia Stokes' name, he put for now, hinting at Kia Stokes being on. I love Kia Stokes. Kia Stokes is fantastic. I 100% agree with Nick Andre. Kia Stokes should not be on this roster anymore. There's a lot of players on this team that I don't think should be on this roster anymore. I don't think Kia Stokes should be here anymore. I don't think Sid Colson should be on this team anymore. I don't think Kirsten Bell should be on this team anymore. Because to your point, like you know this. Like I love Sid, I love Kirsten, but like if this is going to be a team that's going to compete with the New York Liberty, that's going to compete with the Phoenix Mercury, who we're going to talk about in just a second, like if they're going to be competitive and get back to that mountain, a lot of things are going to have to change. So I do hope that Liz Kitley can be a little bit of that answer to that another big question that you're asking. But when you and I were talking back and forth about what would happen with Satou, I did mention, half jokingly, but also very much seriously, maybe we pick up the phone and we see if Elena Delle Donne wants to come back from taking that year off and come out there. I would be very interested to see what that looks like. I think a healthy Elena Delle Donne alongside A'ja Wilson, I think, is great in this new era of Las Vegas basketball. But the question I want to ask you before we move on is, because it's something that I was thinking about as far as how I've convinced myself that this is a good fit, is we've seen Jewell Loyd play alongside players like Chelsea Gray and A'ja Wilson in her career before. She's had success in Seattle playing alongside a Sue Bird and a Breanna Stewart that led to, 2 championships before Sue Bird retired and Breanna Stewart obviously left Seattle to go to be in New York, which is where she is now. Is there anything that, in your perspective, as a former player from a strictly basketball on the court perspective, is there anything that you think the Aces can pull from that time of Jewell Loyd's career playing alongside Bird and Stewart to maybe try to model their team now behind that, in hopes to make this transition for Jewell Loyd into Vegas easier, so that there's not as many concerns about her passiveness or her temperament or her willingness to fit and make this work? Like you said, great players can play along great players, always going to make it work. But is there anything that you look at from that time in Seattle of Jewell Loyd's career that makes you think maybe if Vegas does it that way, it can work and it can still lend to the ultimate goal of trying to get back to and winning a WNBA championship?
I mean, I just think it's different. I just think it's very different. I think she's different. Like, she was still kind of like the young up and coming star. Like you mentioned, she did play with Sue. She did play alongside Stewie. It wasn't until they were gone that we started to look at Jewell as more of like a primary, top shooting guard in the league type of player. Right. So, it's hard to say. That's why I'm interested to see what the product looks like on the floor, because she's at the height of her powers. She's a veteran. She's a champion. She's done it all. She's been a, scoring leader. So plugging her in at shooting guard alongside these champions in Vegas, I mean, I want to see what that looks like. I want to see how she adapts to that. But yeah, I don't know. That's why I want to see it. I mean, I was a big fan of the product with Kelsey Plum. For them to change it up. My last point on Vegas, and I hate to bring it up, but it's a real thing. And I hate to project this on them, but it feels like the De'Arica Hamby karma is coming back to get them. They lost one of their coaches. They not only lost KP, they lost her to go play with De'Arica in LA. Like, listen, again, probably one of the best replacements they could have gotten at shooting guard, replacing Kelsey Plum with Jewell Loyd. But just when you start to see the little changes like that happening, it makes things a little risky. And I just, that De'Arica Hamby lawsuit thing, that whole situation, I feel like is kind of a dark cloud, low key hanging over their heads. And, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't help but think that when I saw De'Arica like so excited that Kelsey was coming to LA, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a kind of karma bug coming back to bite them.
You might be absolutely right there. KTA plus Bless says a lot of moves indeed. Speaking of shocking moves, a team that I don't think anyone expected to be this active in free agency. The Phoenix Mercury not only trade for Alyssa Thomas, they also go out there and they trade for Satou Sabally. Now we're looking at a team that has Kalia Copper, Alyssa Thomas, and Satou Sabally as their big three. They lost a couple other key pieces. Obviously, Brittany Griner signs a 1-year deal in Atlanta. They traded away Sophie Cunningham, as well as Natasha Cloud, a part of what turned into a massive 4-team trade in the end of it. Looking at this team now, you and I got a lot of slack from a couple of people over the course of the season last season because we kept saying that Phoenix was a dark horse. It feels like we're kind of in a deja vu moment now after what's been another pretty crazy offseason for Phoenix. So we're back at it again. Right. Would you say that the Phoenix Mercury are a legitimate title contender now, thanks to the acquisitions of Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally?
No, not yet. But this is the real dark horse. Like we thought they were a dark horse last year. This is the real dark horse. Alyssa Thomas, bro. Satou Sabally. Those are two of the most gaudy additions you could make. How do you add Satou and Alyssa Thomas, bro? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot. Just and you already have Kalia Copper. I mean, that's a lot, bro. That's a lot to work with. But yeah, they don't know what's up with DT. I think DT should try to stick around. I would have loved it for Taurasi and Brittany Griner to stick around for at least one more year with that group in Phoenix. Like that's a team that's a group that you should want to run with. Sure. So we'll see what happens with DT. I think she can still contribute, but it's really about, those three. But yeah, I don't, they're top heavy. We know who their 3 best players are, but after that, there's going to be a drop off. I think I saw they were the ones who signed Sammy Whitcomb, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they did.
It sucks that they weren't able to pick up DeWanna Bonner. She's headed to Indy. They'll come up later because talk about a team that got better. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not going title contender yet. It's still like right now for me in my head, New York, Minnesota, Vegas, Indy, they might be interchangeable. And then the Sparks to me are going to be a real dark horse. And then I'm probably looking at Phoenix, probably between LA and Phoenix, kind of battling for a spot there. But yeah, I still think Phoenix is going to be considered a dark horse, but man, AT and Satou.
Yeah, that's huge,
bro. That's playoffs. That's winning games. That definitely puts you in the mix. But I don't know about title contention right away.
Let me ask you this, because obviously her future is still in the air. We don't know if she's coming back for another season or not. Would Diana Taurasi being on this team next season sway you closer to them being a title contender, or is it still not enough even if she does come back?
It's crazy. Like, again, I think she can still contribute. If she's going to be out there, she can shoot the ball. She can space the floor. She can she can still contribute. She did it last year. As old as
she started off the season leading the league in 3-point makes or something like that.
Right. Averaging double figures. I mean, she was averaging as much as Caitlin Clark at one point in the season. Like, she can still clearly play. It would be interesting because, like, I think this would be a time for Diana to step back. I saw someone's projected starting lineup for them, and they had Diana as the starting point guard. Like, this could be a time for her to play more of like that LeBron point guard, older role, and like just because she can pass the ball. She played point back at UConn. I saw it for myself. She was playing with Sue. She got a lot of reps at point guard. She can be a point. But it would be interesting. Like, I think she could still help them. But to answer your question, the crazy thing is, in my mind, I don't even know if it really makes a difference. I don't know if I see them that much differently unless Diana were to embrace a role of like really being point guard, facilitator, right alongside. Like, Alyssa Thomas is going to do plenty of that herself too. So Diana still could get looks out of that. That's why I'm like, man, she should want to play with this group for one more year. Because Alyssa Thomas, she takes so much of that burden off from a playmaking, standpoint. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of don't see it either way. Like, if they have Diana, if they don't have Diana, I kind of still look at them the same way. Unless Diana comes in on some like super duper point guard veteran, just average double figure assists and plays that style, which I think could help them become, a little more of a title contender.
Yeah,
because they don't have a point guard. That's one of their big holes. Like, their big three is great for the, wing to forward slots, but they lost
Sure.
BG. They don't have a true center, and they don't have a true point guard.
Wait, they do have Kalani Brown. I don't know if Kalani Brown
They did
pick up Kalani Brown as well in the moves, and I do like that acquisition. I think that she'll be able to flourish in this. Obviously,
that was a nice pickup.
The familiarity of playing alongside Satou as well. I do agree with you though. My one concern with Phoenix right now is they are very top heavy, right? And when you look at we saw a team last season that was very top heavy. Yeah, they made it all the way to the finals. But when it got time for, them to rely on others that weren't their top 3, 4, players on the depth chart, things didn't work out that way, right? And so do I think that the Phoenix Mercury are going to be a good basketball team and make a run, maybe win a playoff series and make it to the second round? Absolutely. I think they have the talent is there. The experience is there. I do think the key for them, of course, which was the key even for, the Wings as they were trying to kind of build things around Arike and Satou, is whether or not Satou's going to be healthy and be available, right? Like we saw when she was healthy and available in 2023, she had the best season of her career. She's most improved player. Last season, unfortunately, another season where she misses a large chunk of the year because of injury. So if Satou is healthy, I'm more inclined to think that they are a dark horse. But to your point, I think this would be the thing. This would be the roster that makes Diana Taurasi come back. I don't think Diana Taurasi is coming back to play another season with last year's roster, because last year's roster very clearly that was their ceiling. They were going to be a fringe playoff team, maybe wins a playoff series, but that's it. This team is built to win better, to win more, while also, as you said, take that load off of DT, where she doesn't need to be a primary focal point of this offense every single time out on the floor. But with that reserved energy, if she needs to go out there and hit a couple clutch buckets down the stretch, she can do that because she's just that good at the game. It's like if there was a roster enticing enough in Phoenix to make her come back for one final season, that really, really, really be it, this would be the one. They do still need to get another point guard, because if Diana Taurasi's not coming back, then you're looking at Amy Atwell, Charisma Osborne, Celeste Taylor, and Sammy Whitcomb as your guard room outside of Kalia Copper. And that's not going to be enough to be able to really facilitate this offense and make this offense be what it needs to be. So more than last year, they're definitely firmly in that dark horse kind of tier, that dark horse kind of ring of the WNBA hierarchy. But again, I don't think there are a couple teams that I don't think are done yet. And I think they're one of them. I don't think they're done yet. And I know I said this about Vegas. I would say more seriously, though, than me just being a fan, I think this is a team that maybe does try to make a serious push for a Kennedy Carter, because that could be a little something extra, not to push them over the hump and make them a title contender. But again, if we're talking about a world where either DT needs to take a step back or she's not there at all, Kennedy Carter showed us again in Chicago that she has what it takes to be a lead guard. Obviously not of this much talent, but be a lead guard and be a reliable scorer on the court as well. And so maybe that's something that Phoenix is looking for. The only thing about this for Phoenix that sucks is they don't have a first round pick or a second round pick for that matter. In fact, they don't have a pick at all in this draft. And so they have to either either need Diana Taurasi come back, or they have to make a play for Kennedy Carter. Those are the options for Phoenix if they want to bolster this guard or this guard depth that they got going on, because they don't have a crack at any of the guards that are going to be coming out this year, unless of course they make a trade to go get a pick.
Yeah, Kennedy Carter, I think, might be a little too spicy. I think they got enough spice there for now.
Probably.
Maybe not. I mean, maybe, but yeah, I think DT should want to stick around, if not just to play with Alyssa Thomas. Like,
sure.
I feel like Alyssa Thomas is the best person you could play with. I just feel like she does so much to make your basketball life easy. And it's really cool kind of just seeing how she can bring like her toughness, grit, physicality, and her versatility to Phoenix. And I'm excited for her too, because Alyssa Thomas, Connecticut has had good teams, they put together a good culture and stuff. They never, not never, but as of late, they hadn't been able to get over the hump. And the last couple of years, I feel like I saw Alyssa Thomas really kind of spent, like, not that she was carrying the team by herself, but it felt like just her abilities as a point guard, as a dual forward, the finisher, the best defender, guarding the best player. I feel like I could see that really wearing on her. So I'm excited for her to have the opportunity to play with, again, another versatile forward like Satou. And then someone like Kalia Copper. I really look forward to seeing how that works together. But they're going to be good, man. This is the real dark horse. Last year, Natasha Cloud, bless her heart, she only spent a year there. She's right back to Connecticut, right back to the doldrums. But Rebecca Allen and Sophie Cunningham and Natasha Cloud, and that was cute last year. That was a cute little dark horse. This is a real dark horse that you have to take seriously. To your point, especially if they're healthy, because of the fact that they're so top heavy. If AT goes down or Satou goes down, just like that, you become basically just another good team out here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I 100% agree with you there. Let's get into some winners and some losers. I feel like after having talked basketball with you long enough, I have a general idea of where you might be going with your winners, not so much your losers, but who would you say are the biggest, who is the biggest winner, or who are the biggest winners of free agency so far?
I mean, we're talking trades and everything, all things considered, all moves considered. Phoenix is obviously a huge win. Again, like, no team added the caliber of players that Phoenix did just in the two, Alyssa Thomas and Satou. Like, a most improved player. Both of them have been in the top 3 or 4 in the MVP ballots in the last few years. Both considered top 10 players in the league. So, I mean, they're like, I easily see them as a big winner. I would definitely say the Indiana Fever are a huge winner because they've added what you've pointed out earlier, that the Aces are truly lacking in, and that's depth. Indiana added such great depth to what they have. They lose Nalissa Smith, but they get in Natasha Howard, who she's going to be a marvel. She's going to be a godsend for Caitlin Clark in the pick and pop game. Adding Sophie Cunningham, just another competitor, floor spacer, and then Dewana Bonner, who's a veteran, a winner. Even the fact that she wanted to go there. She's kind of, it feels like ring chasing a little bit, but she wants to contribute to what they're doing, and she's going to fit in her style. Of course, she's a little older, but she gets up and down well, and that team's going to be getting up and down more this year, I guarantee you. But adding 3 legit quality rotation players, including the likes of a Dewana Bonner, Natasha Howard, who's been a defensive player of the year. Natasha Howard started her career in Indiana. They're opening a brand new, $180 million practice facility. Even Stephanie White, even the fact that they got Stephanie White as their head coach, like, this has been a masterful all season for Indiana. And it's why I have them as such big winners. It's because it wasn't a big name. It wasn't a Satou or Alyssa Thomas. Like, Phoenix got those. Vegas and the Sparks, they got big, we saw the big names. Indiana got that much better with just good players, good pickups. Dewana Bonner is a veteran. She's not in her prime right now, but we know who she is. Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham. These are 3 players who will be in the rotation and add to their depth now. So that I just saw that those were huge pickups for Indiana. They're definitely winners to me.
Yeah, I agree. I have 2 big winners. My first big winner has to be LA. I know you talked about earlier, like, they have a bona fide playoff contending basketball team now with Kelsey Plum, who's a proven winner in this league, with Rakia Jackson, who you and I talked about ad nauseum, at times looked like the best player on this team, certainly the most versatile player on this team, with a player in Cameron Brink who's going to be back off of the ACL injury. And she, in the little bit that we saw from her, looked like she exactly we thought she was going to be a legit defensive anchor for this basketball team down low. And then, of course, Dearica Hamby, who they still have coming off of an MVP caliber season from her, the best season of her career by far. Massive winners for them. I think despite trading the second overall pick, which I did see that they did that because there was some questions about who exactly would be there at number 2 overall, which I think is valid 100%, because we've been talking about Olivia Miles being available, but Olivia Miles doesn't have to come out this year. So with the questions there, but to be able to still be able to pick in the first round at what I believe is the 9th pick and still have an opportunity to bring in a high quality rookie onto this team, I think is a massive win for them. The other big winner for me, though, are the Dallas Wings. The Dallas Wings, yes, they lost Satou Sabally, who was their second best player, but they're bringing in Dejanay Carrington, who had the best season of her career last season. It was seatbelt season last season in Connecticut. It's going to be seatbelt season again for her in Dallas. You're bringing in along with her Ty Harris as well, also out of Connecticut, which is another great pickup. You're also bringing in Alyssa Smith, a player who a lot of people thought didn't get the love and the credit and the run that she deserved in Indiana. She's going to get a lot of that now that she's in Dallas. They're picking up a couple picks. They have the 12th pick in this round, so they've got the first and the last pick in the first round, which is huge for them. So that we know they're getting Paige. They're also going to get, again, another quality player to bring in as a rotational player young. And not a major splash compared to some of the other moves, but they did also sign Maisha Hines-Allen to a 1-year deal as well. And she's a veteran, a champion in this league. We just saw her in the finals with Minnesota just last season. For the Dallas Wings to go from being a team in desperate need of a rebuild and in desperate need of committing to a direction one way or another of, are we going to tank and rebuild? Are we going to try our best to compete, to being now what I expect to be a playoff team and a competitive team in this league? Hats off to Kurt Miller, bro. He went down there to Dallas and he got right to work, and he's turned this roster around, and that's huge for them. I'm very excited to see the Dallas Wings play basketball. Very excited to see who they pick up with that 12th overall pick as well to bring in with this team as well. Again, you talk about how the Fever, they didn't go out there and get a bunch of big name players. They got quality, hot, good players. You can say the same thing for the Wings. They were able to turn Satou Sabally and turn some of these other players they let walk into quality players who have experience, who are veterans in this league, who also fit with what they're trying to do in Dallas. So major props to Dallas. I would say that they're another big winner of free agency for sure.
Yeah, I think those are really good pickups for them. Having lost Satou, Dejanay and Alyssa, it's going to be fun with them being a couple. They're the new power basketball couple now as teammates. Since we lose out on AT and Dewana, they're parting ways, not teammates anymore. But Dejanay and Alyssa in Dallas, that's pretty cool. And Dejanay, that was a big pickup for Dallas. That's a big pickup for Dallas after the way she played last year. And Alyssa Smith too. I think she's going to have a little something to prove. And they need those added weapons and players with that experience. You see, they traded away JC Sheldon, their precious number 5 pick or whatever pick it was last year. When I said they should have just drafted Angel Reese, y'all did all that just to trade your
away.
top 5 draft pick a year later. Wow, it's like, geez. But yeah, with that, I mean, it's going to come down to Paige and Enrique. It's going to come down to that backcourt, and I like their additions and how they're filling out the roster, because they're going to need players like that to surround a player like Paige. And Enrique deserves that support too. Again, especially losing Satou, you definitely want to make up for that. So I agree. I think Atlanta's a winner too, but that's one where I need to see them. I don't know if I'm more optimistic about Bree Jones or Brittany Griner. I feel like it's Bree Jones. But speaking of coaching, does Dallas have a head coach? Remind me, do they have a head coach yet?
They do. I think they do. I don't think
it's slipping my mind who they hired.
Let's find out together. Yeah, they have Chris. I'm gonna mess his last name up. Chris Coclanes is their head coach. I don't. He's
Yeah, give me some background because the name isn't going to do it.
yeah.
For me.
He's been an assistant coach in WNBA and D1 for a decade. He was the assistant coach at USC. He's the assistant coach from USC that got hired to be their head coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I missed that.
Yeah.
Another college one. But in Atlanta, they got the Florida Gulf Coast coach who wants to shoot a bunch of threes and wants to play small ball and get up and down. So, I mean, I'm excited about that for Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard. Sometimes Brittany Griner can shoot. Bree Jones can shoot. They're not stretch bigs. They're not, like Jokic or anything, but like, they can both shoot. So it'll be interesting how that works. And even in systems like that, you still need good bigs. So I do think, even BG just in a new location, I think she's gonna, really look to give Atlanta as much as she can. And Bree Jones, a very good rotational player, one of the whole roster of Connecticut, all good to great players who just got depleted from the Connecticut roster, and now they're all elsewhere helping other teams. And Bree Jones is going to help Atlanta for sure. So I think, Atlanta's kind of like a sneaky winner there, I think.
Very, very sneaky. Speaking of Connecticut, before we get out of here, biggest losers of free agency. I assume that the Connecticut Sun have to be at the top of that list. When you go from being a perennial championship contender, you lose your head coach, you lose all 5 starters. We've never before has a team lost all 5 of its postseason starters from its last postseason appearance season 4. And they're all doing other things. I mean, you've got Natasha Cloud, who knows if she even plays a game in Connecticut, right? She might not even still be in Connecticut by this time next week. I believe they acquired Rebecca Allen at some point during all that trading. Like, same thing with her.
Yeah.
The only player left is Marina Mabry. Is the player that we
got Marina Mabry. They brought back Tina Charles is going to do one last stint there. They brought her back, and then I saw they signed Diamond DeShields. So they'll be one of those teams that just isn't that good, but has some respectable players, and they've fallen very far. And I had, when I talked about Connecticut a lot over the last couple of years, I would just look at them like, hey, it seems like they need some kind of transformation here. Like, great culture, great defensive, tough-minded, gritty. That's where I'm like really excited to see what Stephanie White does in Indiana too, because she has developed this identity in Connecticut of defensive, like, almost like the grit and grind style that Memphis Grizzlies used to have. Like, that was an identity that she really cultivated. And I think she's going all out on the offensive side of the ball in Indiana. Of course, injecting some of her defensive stuff in there too, but Indiana's about offensive basketball, pace, transition, shooting threes. So seeing her make that adjustment will be interesting. But yeah, the Connecticut Sun, they're going back to zero in many ways. So big losers. Like, they're not in the mix anymore.
No, they're not. Another loser for me is the Mystics. I'm having a hard time understanding what's happening with them. Like, in an off season where we're seeing all these different players get traded and all these different players get acquired and signed, like, the Washington Mystics roster is the exact same as it was their last game of the season, minus Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, who you could argue is their best bench player. She finished, I think, top 3 or top 4 in 6th player of the year voting this year. Now, if you want to hang your hat on the fact that you have the 4th and 6th overall picks in this year's draft, that's fine. But if I'm looking at this roster, a roster that has Ariel Atkins, Shakira Austin, Stephanie Dawson, Aaliyah Edwards, Emily Enksler, Jade Melbourne, like Brittany Sykes, who I know you love, like, again, good players. But the Mystics are going to be exactly where they were last season. A team who we acknowledge last season was a lot better than their record indicated, because a bunch of players at multiple different times of the season missed time. Shakira Austin missed time, Brittany Sykes. Like, it seemed like everybody missed at least a week or two of the season for some reason or other. This team fully healthy is not that much better than the team we saw last year, and you're just going to add a 4th and a 6th overall pick. At some point, the Mystics need to make a decision about whether or not they're actually going to try to be competitive to get back to where they were just a couple years ago. Now, I don't know if they're holding their breath and waiting for Elena Delle Donne to announce that she's coming back to DC, but you also haven't done anything over the past year and a half to make her want to come back to DC. Like, I feel like this is a very disappointing offseason for a team that has young players in Shakira Austin and Aaliyah Edwards who you can build around if you decide to do so. I know they let go of the GM and the head coach, but like, there doesn't seem to really be a direction right now in DC, and they have to be losers because they didn't. Everyone else did something, and they didn't. Like, they did nothing. They're the exact same, and it just feels like they're banking on the 4th and 6th overall pick to come in and be a little bit of a difference maker. And I just feel like that's not enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think their only choice at this point is to continue to build through the draft because they don't have, like, think about what's happening right now. Players are going to these what are you seeing so much in these stories about where players are choosing to go? Phoenix, LA, Dallas, facilities, bro. Facilities. Yep. So it's becoming more and more of a priority. You talk about them they're not going to attract. No one's raising their hand saying, I want to go to DC. I want to go to the Mystics. They're not raising their hand saying they're not choosing to go places unless they had, like, now they're talking about $100 million practice facility, downtown Phoenix, boom. Yep. You know, like, that's what they're going to prefer and prioritize. So for a team like the Mystics who don't have that and aren't going to they don't have that appeal from a brand standpoint or anything, not right now at least, I think that's their only choice is to continue to try building through the draft. And like, they're going to have, you know, mediocre to bad teams, which means they're going to keep stocking high draft picks, you know, theoretically in the next few years with all the great players coming out. That should mean that, you know, in 5 to 10 years, they should have a pretty good
have a playoff caliber basketball team.
So, you know, if you stay patient, maybe that's their process right now. But I wouldn't even expect them to be landing anyone in this free agency or any free agency going forward. They don't have that appeal right now from a roster standpoint or just from the franchise in general.
Yeah. Last thing I will say, and I don't know if you noticed this also, this free agency is going to have nothing on next year's free agency. All of these deals that were signed, like Brittany Griner's deal, Bree Jones,
one-year deals.
They're all 1-year deals because the new CBA kicks in 2026.
That's right.
Like all of we thought this offseason was crazy and unexpected. Like, next year is going to be. Now, I do think, especially depending on how, you know, some of these seasons go for some of these players, I do think a lot of these players are going to stay put. I don't think it's going to be a complete Wild West shuffle again like it has been so far over the past week or so. But I do anticipate that there's going to be some level of movement, maybe comparable to what we're seeing this year because of that CBA. And again, it could just be we want to sign a 1-year deal and then be up for a contract extension when the salary cap increases and things of that nature. I got that. But if this year was any indication with all the 1-year deals, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I'm very excited to see what the 2026 free agency period is going to look like as well, especially once we know that new CBA looks like. But yeah,
a lot of things changing. Because things are changing fast. And if you mentioned, you know, DeWanna Bonner and BG, you know, it could be their last season this year. So, you know, that 1-year deal, you look at where they went, and why it's a 1 year, it starts to add up, you know, in their cases, at least for the older players, right? 1-year deals are kind of, you know, like, I think that's more of it where the league is shifting fast. The teams that, you know, like are ready to compete or that are rising up, the rosters mixed with the facilities and who's got the right stuff that players are looking for, it's making things change fast. And then, you know, throw in the new CBA, like you mentioned, next year. So I think this season, people, you know, players are seeing an opportunity to be like, listen, I'm gonna get what I can this year, even if it's for 1 year. I'm gonna be comfortable and I'm gonna give myself a chance to compete.
Absolutely. It is always a pleasure to talk women's basketball with the one and only Martin Sories. We appreciate all of you guys that tapped in with us live for our first show back, our first show of 2025, and our first show officially now on Basketball Society. So for more of Protect Our Queens, make sure you are liking and subscribing to Basketball Society's YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram at Protect Our Queens _. Follow us on Twitter at PO Queens _. You can also find us on Threads and, of course, right here on Basketball Society's YouTube channel. So for my guy, Martin Sories, this is Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you guys enjoy yourselves some women's basketball.